Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans, and we are feeling fantastic. 3 straight wins now by the Pelicans to close out a 5-game homestand with another victory. 112-83 to defeat the Nets, hold them to their lowest scoring output in the first half, 50-something points. I don't know the particulars. That's why we have Jim Eichenhofer from Pelicans.com, because you put that in all of the daily and nightly articles. Go ahead and give us some of the things that really stood out in the win last night.
Yeah, the 85 points that they gave up was the fewest of the season. The previous was 87 against the Knicks. So for some reason, the two teams from New York City have a tough time in the Smoothie King Center putting the ball in the basket. I think some of the biggest takeaways that I had was you beat the Lakers 2 nights earlier. It's extremely exciting. Probably, for me, the most fun win of the season. It was just an entertaining game with Jose Alvarado running all over the place and just some of the plays that they made, the way that the Pelicans shot threes. And you think, you're playing Brooklyn. They've struggled big time lately. They've only won 2 out of their last 10 games, and both of those wins were against Detroit. They're not really a star-studded team. It's a Tuesday. It's a little bit less attractive game, so you wonder, is there going to be a little bit of a letdown? But instead of that, the Pelicans came out and were up 16-3 right off the bat and really kind of left no doubt to me that they were going to win the game. They held Brooklyn to 28% field goal shooting in the first half, and also the Nets only took 2 free throws in the first half. So to me, the intensity on defense was there for pretty much all 48 minutes, and I was just impressed by the way that they came out. The starters, have had some games where they've struggled, but this game they were fantastic in the first 5-6 minutes of the game. And then you bring in the backups, and Jose and Naji and Larry Nance once again, brought it and had really productive games. So, I mean, the starting 5 and really the top 8-9 guys I think are really clicking right now.
Jim, we talked about this going into it, and I think one of the things that's going to be fun when we bring in our special guest next segment, Madeline Adams from Fox 8, with a very special announcement that we're super excited about here with the Pelicans to talk about. But one of the things that we're going to bring up with her, too, is you're starting to see, I guess, certain things that, I don't know, giving me hints and covering other winning teams, other winning organizations, even one here in the building. There's a turning of the page there, and it's what we've been talking about. I told you the last show that we were going to have, I was going to say, I want to see when this team becomes contenders. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different, right? I mean, I got, Perkins out there saying OKC's a contender. Yeah, let's get in the playoffs first and see if we can do that. They're having a good season. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's what we remember Jason Smith, who joined us a couple weeks ago. You have to go through pain. You have to go through hardships. David Wesley said it as well. It's like in the NBA, you have to go through that pain. You have to go through those hardships. You can have exciting years and good years, but to be a contender, I think you have to go through a crucible of sorts in certain things. And you lose those 2 games, and it didn't feel good. And you and I sat across here and we looked at each other, and I said, you win the next 3, it's going to be a lot easier to forget about those 2. And here we are, the 3rd of January. And on this Wednesday, I have to go back and try to remember what that Memphis and Houston loss was because of the 3 wins. But in those 3 wins, what stood out to me, your 2 veterans, we talked about this the last podcast, they said, we're not losing those games. Larry Nance, first game back against Memphis, literally led by example, right? All over the floor. CJ McCollum in that Lakers game, 5 first-quarter threes. That start meant everything. If they go down to the Lakers, they're trailing, somebody's in foul trouble, the crowd is booing, LeBron's at the free throw line. It would have felt different. You started hot from the get-go, led by your veteran. And then you go back to even last night, kind of the same thing. Yeah. CJ, first quarter, first half was hot. Your vets led. You didn't ever get the sense and feel, Jim, the proverbial phrase, playing with your food. That was a team you absolutely should have beat, and there was never a doubt that you were going to lose that game. And that's what I think that's a sign of growth. That's a sign of growth.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, CJ, especially in the home games, when you come out and set that tone of confidence, I think that's big. I think everybody in the arena was kind of like a party immediately last night. After the first few minutes, it was like, the fact that the Pelicans played as well as they did, and honestly, that Brooklyn played so poorly, I never really got concerned last night. It was another fun game, maybe not the same as beating the Lakers and doing what Jose did to LeBron and some of the other stuff that happened in that game, but this was even more dominant as far as, to win by 27 points and to be up 25 at halftime. I mean, we know every team in the NBA has talent, so to be able to be up by that much at the break, I thought was a great sign. And like you said, I mean, they closed the homestand 3-2, and the first two of those wins, they beat a Utah team that they had already lost twice to, and then obviously the Lakers, a team that was a 44-point loss in Las Vegas to them. So I think you're seeing them bounce back, but I think even more tangibly, you're seeing a team that is just closer to full strength. And when they are, even though Trey Murphy's been out the last couple games, but we see when they're closer to 100%, just the talent is so evident. The fact that they have a first string and a second string that's full of guys that can hurt the opposition has been pretty clear lately.
I think the final thing that I want to touch on, especially with yesterday too as well, I said this in postgame. Do you know there wasn't a starter over 16 points? Zion had 10. B.I. had 12. CJ 16. I'm not being disrespectful. Those are pedestrian numbers for those players, right? I mean, they used to have a 22, 26, but that's the point. But then you look at this number, 5 assists Zion, 5 assists Brandon Ingram, 12 rebounds by Jonas, 5 assists from C.J. McCollum. So your big three all had 5 assists. So, I mean, that's kind of going to show you, but that's what I mean. This is different. This is a different team. I mean, normally if I walked to you and said, Zion has 12, B.I. 10, CJ 16, you're probably going to tell me that was a battle to the death with a bad Brooklyn Nets team. And it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I had written about how those three guys averaged 71.5 points in the previous 2 games that were both wins. And then in this game, they combined for 38. So, I mean, almost half of what they had done previously. But you know what? The Pelicans love it, and the coaches love it, because going into this back-to-back against Minnesota, for them to keep those minutes down, the fact that Zion played the most minutes of anyone at 25 minutes, 38 seconds, and nobody else among the starters, Hawkins had 26 minutes. That's great, because, I mean, there's no reason why they can't be, other than I'm sure they got in very late to Minneapolis this morning. There's no reason why they can't be, ready to go, because they all got to rest in the fourth quarter. And that was great, that the fact that they were up, not only did they win the game by 27, but they were up 27 at the end of the third quarter as well.
Yeah, we'll touch on that big game tonight coming up in our third segment against Minnesota, and then also Western Conference Wednesday here as well. But you may have seen over the weekend, you may not have. It was New Year's Eve weekend, so obviously lots of people doing lots of things. But I don't know, there's a famous phrase in the movie, build it and they will come, or something of that nature. Aaron, and maybe they'll watch. I guess it's the kind of way I'll look at it. A partnership between Great Television and the New Orleans Pelicans will air free over the airwaves all over the Gulf South, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, all over Louisiana. 10 Pelicans games over the next 4 months, beginning on January 12th when they take on the Denver Nuggets. That's massive news. So that is when we go to our guest of the day. All right, Jim, time to welcome in a very special guest for a very special announcement on a very special day. First off, we're celebrating 3 wins in a row with the Pelicans, so that was fun in that opening segment. But now, got some big news to bring in, so who better to usher that in than the uber-talented Madeline Adams from Fox 8. And Madeline Adams TV is the way to follow over on X or Twitter, whatever makes you comfortable. Of course, you can catch her on Fox 8, covering LSU, Saints, and Pelicans. Hey, Madeline, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, you guys. How are y'all doing this morning? Thank you so much for having me on.
We're doing well, Madeline, and it's great to have you on. As Gus referenced, I mean, the news on the court has been extremely positive, very good lately, with a lot of wins over the last month or so. But off the court, I mean, I think this is one of the best pieces of news and developments that's happened to the Pelicans organization lately with the deal with Fox 8 with 10 games coming on. I mentioned how it feels like the fan reaction from our end has been extremely receptive and positive and excited about this. What's it been like for you guys as far as just over these last few days since I think Saturday was the announcement? What's it been like as far as the feedback that you guys have gotten?
So we got the email on Saturday that this was happening, and that's when the news was officially released. And I can tell you the entire station was just buzzing with excitement because we truly know how important Pelicans basketball is to the city of New Orleans, to the state of Louisiana, and really the entire Gulf South region. There's so many fans across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And so we were just so excited with the news, and we were just buzzing with excitement. And then when we released the announcement, to see the fan reaction was just so incredible. Got so many tweets, so many, Facebook comments, on every single post when we released the schedule and the announcement and everything, about fans just so excited that they can watch it on Fox 8. And I think that was the most exciting thing for us too, because obviously as a station, we are so pumped. And as a great TV company, we're so excited to be doing this. But just to see the fans' reaction too, and to see how excited they are that this is finally happening for 10 games is just really exciting. And it's going to be so much fun. What a great slate of games too that we have. So we were just so excited. And I think we were already like at level 10, and then it like raised several levels when we could see the excitement from the fans. So we were just so pumped for these next few months.
Yeah, the agreement's pretty awesome over the next 4 months, not only with Fox 8, but Gray Television. And I think what makes that so big too is I know when I come in and you guys ask me to do stuff with you guys, they have a bank of monitors, Jim, that's almost the size of the back wall. They're in Paris, and there's London, and there's all kind of different cities across the country. So, but specifically with the 10 stations that Gray's going to be in the Gulf South, look, we obviously know, being in this building, it was important for the Saints several years ago to become a Gulf South and a regional team. I remember that clear as day from Tom Benson's mouth to the direction that this organization wanted to do. And to be able to have, what is it, Madeline, 7 million viewers be able to put their eyes on, if they choose to watch Pelicans basketball, is a massive thing. And I do think, we're spoiled. We get to see them and you get to cover them. But there's going to be some people. I went to Hattiesburg at Southern Miss. They're going to get to see a Pels game. All the way in North Louisiana, Mobile. You're going to get a chance to see what Zion looks like, see Grand Theft Alvarado, all that stuff. That's exciting because that does help fan engagement. It just does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most exciting things too, is the potential for fan growth for this franchise. Like you mentioned it, 10 times the amount of people will be able to watch Pelicans games because of this deal. And it extends, like I said, from Louisiana to Mississippi to Alabama. Every Gray station in those states will be able to air the Pelicans games, which is going to be really, really just so cool. Like you said, the fact that people now can watch this, these games for free, these 10 games for free, maybe we'll bring in an audience that wasn't able to watch the Pelicans before. And so you're able to grow the fan base from people, just like you mentioned, being able to watch this team play. And it's, it's been an exciting time too for, it's kind of like perfect timing for this deal, because the Pelicans have been playing some of their best basketball. And, I remember at the Smoothie King Center on Sunday night against the Lakers, like you mentioned it, Jose, with the GTAs twice on LeBron, and just the way the Smoothie King Center exploded. I can only imagine like the more people that are able to kind of watch and fall in love with this team and become a fan of this team. So yeah, just the amount of reach that the Pelicans will be able to kind of, the potential growth of the fan base, because, like you mentioned, 7 million people within this reach for great TV. So really excited about that too, the potential to grow the fan base.
Madeline, you mentioned, you're also interested and excited about the specific schedule that you guys have. What are your thoughts on just kind of how many compelling matchups there are? You talked about the game against the Lakers. That's one of the teams that's on there, but it seems like really from top to bottom, it's a bunch of games that people are going to be really interested in seeing.
Yeah, not only were we excited about just the fact that we get to air 10 games on our air, it's the slate of games that we have. To start on January 12th, next Friday, with the defending NBA champions is so cool. That's always going to be a great game in Denver too, as well. And then you look at January 19th is against the Suns, have a couple games against the Suns. Those are just always exciting, interesting matchups between the Pelicans and the Suns. It's just kind of developed over the last couple of years that those matchups always bring such pure entertainment. So that's going to be fun too. Teams like the Knicks, the Pacers, 76ers, the Heat, who were in the NBA Finals a year ago. So this past season. So that's going to be really exciting too. Oklahoma City, who's one of the top teams in the Western Conference, really young core, who's exciting to watch as well. And then Golden State, who's just, I know is a team that NBA fans all across the country like to watch as well. So the slate of games is really exciting too. Some big time matchups. And I think obviously as we get toward April 12th, that last game against the Warriors, these games are going to be meaningful games too. They're going to be entertaining, but they're going to be meaningful games in the Western Conference.
Yeah, no doubt. I know we talk about that all the time. Look, we kind of saw a little bit of that last year with OKC, that they had that young core and they were going to be an issue, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and stuff. But you look up and down the Western Conference, they're all going to be tough and they're all good. But as you mentioned, marquee names, places that fans maybe outside the area like, oh, that's Jimmy Butler and all those others. So it is going to be a good slate. I can't wait for it.
Madeline, you mentioned the Suns. I think intense is one of the ways I would describe those games against them as well, dating back to the playoffs, even though they've pretty much turned over their entire roster from the year that they went to the NBA Finals. But nonetheless, those games are ones that people and fans definitely circle. We talked about, and you also discussed, the ways that this deal with Fox 8 is beneficial towards the Pelicans in terms of the audience that is going to expand. But what do you think are some of the ways that it benefits Fox 8 as far as, maybe bringing in different viewers? I know for myself, a lot of times if I'm watching a game, like I watch, the Sunday late NFL game, and I'm even more likely to watch the local news that comes on after it. So it just seems like, what do you think are some of the ways that this is going to benefit you guys specifically?
Yeah, obviously there's going to be even more eyes on Fox 8 as people tune in to watch the Pelicans. So that's really a great opportunity for us. And I think too, I give so much credit to Gray Television, to Fox 8 for just the way that they invest in sports, especially in local TV. That's just so rare. And so the way that this company, that Fox 8 and all the other Gray stations have really invested in sports is really important to me. And I know it's important to the audiences of those local TV markets. So yeah, just to get more eyes on Fox 8 will be huge for us. And, we really want the New Orleans community, the Southeast Louisiana community to know how much we enjoy kind of putting this content out there, enjoy really investing in sports. So that's going to be exciting too. And yeah, Jim, like you mentioned it, I mean, people tune in for, a game, and if it's on our air, the Saints games are on our air a lot, and, people will stay tuned for the final play at night, on Sunday nights, where we kind of cover everything going on in the sports world, not just Saints, but Pels, LSU, Tulane, and all the other local sports. So yeah, I mean, it's going to get more eyes on the station, which is a great opportunity for us. But at the end of the day, it's the most important thing that, our community and our audience knows that we want to invest in sports, local sports here too.
I'm just curious as to who's going to bring up their driveway rec game more. Is it going to be Juan? Is he going to talk about how he used to hoop back in the day? Is Garland all of a sudden going to go from, soccer extraordinaire to you don't want to see me shoot the open three? Is Fazan going to talk about backing people down in the block? I mean, Madeline, I don't know. I mean, you have a lot of experience covering, LSU and women's basketball. You were with them for the run. Maybe you want the ball and go Caitlin Clark, and shoot at the buzzer. So I'm curious as to who on the group has the best basketball game.
Oh, you know what? I would never doubt any of them because they're all so athletic and competitive. If you've ever seen one of the Saints flag football games, you know how competitive the Fox 8 crew is.
Yes.
But honestly, I wouldn't doubt anybody. I used to play basketball, basketball, but pre-junior high days, like elementary school. But the height, everybody kind of always assumes. I'm 5'10", they assume, that I'm
5'7", Madeline.
And I wish I would have stuck with it because I'm like, man, maybe I've had a little bit of a basketball career. So I've been asking if we could do how we do the Saints flag football game, if we could do that.
We used to have a media game. Yes. Will Guillory apparently is a master marksman.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Excellent 3-point shooter.
Yes. I would love to have a Pels media basketball game so we could figure that out for sure.
It's going to happen. We're going to make that sure happen for sure. But obviously, as Jim was saying, look, there's a lot of excitement about this coming up as the calendar year turns. An important stretch, an important start, I think, for the Pels here in this upcoming 5-game road trip, much less the last game here on Friday. Before they go on that road trip against the Clippers, they're playing pretty much everybody above them and then a team right below them in Dallas twice. So I don't know. What is it that you're excited to see as we turn the calendar, and what you think the team has been like as we turn the calendar? For me, it's simple. Can they go from being a competitor to a contender? That's a different thing for me. I think they can compete every night. Now, what's that step to become a contender? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's developing more consistency. And I think over the last 10 games, they're 8-2, which is really impressive. I know Willie Green always kind of judges the team based on 10-game increments. So they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. It's pretty consistent. But yeah, I mean, if you think back to this time last year, this is kind of when everything started to change for the Pelicans. I know it was mentioned last night in the post-game presser as well to head coach Willie Green that like January was kind of that month that kind of just the season kind of didn't turn out the way that the Pelicans thought it would. They were number 1 in the Western Conference in December, and then January things started to change. Obviously, injuries played a huge part in that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just really interested, like you mentioned, Gus, they play, I think, 4 top 6 teams in the next 5 games, top 6 teams in the Western Conference. So this next road game stretch, these next, 5-6 games are really going to tell you a lot about the Pelicans, how much, can they be consistent against all of these teams? Can they get wins in, Golden State, in Sacramento, against these, top teams in the Western Conference? Obviously, tomorrow night, one of the biggest games against the Minnesota Timberwolves, or actually tonight, I'm sorry, losing track of days here. Tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves, second night of a back-to-back, number 1 team in the Western Conference. Good thing for the Pels is they got to rest their starters a little bit more last night than they would on a normal game with that huge lead that they had over the Brooklyn Nets. So that's going to be a positive for the Pelicans heading into tonight's game. But yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of going to be the stretch where, Gus, like you mentioned it, we're going to find out, are they just, competitive, or are they a true contender in the Western Conference over these next 6-7 games?
It's interesting because, since the in-season tournament, the Pelicans have only lost 3 games total, and they've all been by 1 possession. But every other game they've played, they've won, including a bunch of games by a pretty big margin. How much has, if at all, how much has your perspective changed on the potential of this team over the last few weeks, just based on how they started the season and then the way that they've played lately, especially much closer to full strength now?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, just to see this team kind of as healthy as we've seen them in a while. Obviously, Murphy's a huge injury on the bench right now, but just to see this team kind of working together, be as healthy as they've been in a long time has been really impressive. Yeah, I mean, to only have 3 losses since that in-season tournament loss to the Lakers, I think they struggled with like having double-digit leads and then just kind of giving that up. In the fourth quarter. And that's kind of been an issue that's they've worked on a lot, and that's kind of been resolved because these last few games they've had double-digit leads and they've been able to hold on to them, and they've closed out these games, and they haven't, kind of lost control in the fourth quarter. So that's been really impressive too, just the way that was, struggling to hold on to those double-digit leads was such an issue a couple weeks ago, and that's kind of been something that they focused on and worked on, and that's improved. And so, yeah, I mean, I think just them being healthy, it kind of shows you more and more what this team can do and what this team can be, and just for them to, I think the win over the Jazz and the win over the Lakers was just really the 2 games where you're like, okay, this it's kind of turning around. We're kind of doing a 180 here. Because the Jazz have just always been so hard for the Pelicans to beat. They've just kind of been that mismatch for the Pelicans. I don't think since the start of last season, they hadn't beat the Jazz till that game.
Right.
The way they responded to that 44-point loss to the Lakers. I mean, truly, and I tweeted that's just kind of the NBA, right? You lose to the Lakers by 44 points, you beat them the next time by 20, the next time you play them. And so that's kind of the NBA, but it's all about how you respond. And I think the Pelicans have responded well to some early season struggles, adversity, and they're just really finding a rhythm. I mean, you look last night, every starter in double figures, but no starters over 20 points, but they were still able to just dominate that game. And it was never, truly a close game. So I think that's one of the most impressive things too. So yeah, I mean, I think as this team kind of continues to be healthy, stay healthy, they could make some noise in the Western Conference. I don't think they're done climbing at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about, because I do think it's starting to feel a little bit different. I think they're a better team this year, despite not having as many wins than they were last year. They can withstand injuries. Jim and I talk about that all the time, seeing that next step. It really comes down, Madeline, I guess the difference, and you've seen it from covering teams that before they went to Omaha, right, with Jay Johnson, before you saw Kim move forward with LSU basketball, before Willie Green with Michael Pratt and Tulane went to the Cotton Bowl. It's that feeling of, can they compete? Can they win? And then that last step is, can they believe it in themselves? And once they do, we saw it with the football team in Uptown. They said a year before, we're going to win it all, right? I mean, you kind of saw with LSU baseball, that was the goal. Everyone knew going into it, they were going to do that. I'm starting to kind of feel that belief here. And that's something that Jim and I talked about in the opening segment, the last 2 wins, to make sure you had a good home win here. They were led by veterans. C.J. McCollum came out in that Utah game, said we're not losing. The way they started against the Lakers, veteran-led team with C.J., Larry Nance, the one before that was I was trying to get to. But that's the thing. You're starting to get the sense and feel that if they want it, if they show up and play, if they play the defense holding the Nets to 10 points or something like that, it felt like in the game, that's the difference. Then where in the last 2 seasons, Madeline, you're doing a show, you're going through the highlights, Zion's hurt, BI's not playing, Trey's not playing. Who's going to score? Where are the threes coming from? It's going to be a struggle to beat the Nets. That wasn't the case. So that's where I see the differences in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and look, I think even in the last 2 years, we've known this team is talented. We've known they've had a talented roster from top to bottom. The depth on this team is off the charts. But I think the biggest thing this year, and I'll go back to consistency. 8-2 over these last 10 games, they're starting to kind of develop consistency, because it's one thing to kind of show flashes of greatness and be the number 1 seed in December, but can you kind of be close to the top toward the end of the season, which is when you want to be there? And I know Zion, I think, mentioned that before the season at the very first press conference. He was like, it's great to be number 1 in December, but the most important thing is to be number 1 at the end of the year. And so I think that's kind of the most important thing too. And Gus, like you mentioned, the teams, LSU baseball, LSU women's basketball, Tulane, what was most important about those teams is they were consistent and they hit their stride at the perfect time. Yeah. I mean, LSU women's basketball played their best basketball at the Final Four, Sweet 16, Elite 8. LSU baseball, I mean, they were number 1 for a large part of the season, but, they went into Omaha as the 2 seed, but then they played some of their best baseball. They just put together games that, hey, like basketball, if they needed more so of their defense, they used more, there we go. They kind of, focused more on their defense, LSU basketball, if that's what the game called for. And so I think, the most important thing is just hitting its stride when it matters most, and developing consistency before then. And so I think that's kind of, again, what these next few weeks are going to show us about this team.
Yep, no doubt. Madeline Adams, Fox 8 TV. Jim, it's going to be fun being partners with Fox 8. Obviously, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And more importantly, I am going to make sure that we get some sort of basketball challenge, because I think Madeline's going to smoke one. I really do. I really do. I definitely think you're the youngest of us. So, I mean, that is very true.
Confidence, Gus. I appreciate your I have not shot a basketball in probably like a decade, but you know what? I'll start practicing. We'll make it work. But I would love to play in that Pels media basketball game. And yeah, we're just so excited. We've got some fun things in the works too when it comes to just pumping out more Pels content on Fox 8, especially for that first game against the Nuggets. So we are just so excited and can't wait for these 10 games.
Look, I can vouch in that last Saints media game that was in 2 years ago. She picked off a pass in front of me, and I might have accidentally, I don't know, run into her a little hard. I bounced off of Madeline. So, I mean, that's I'm just telling you, she's got no fear on that. So I can't, since then I've yet to step back onto that football field. I'm done. My playing days are over.
I took a break from the Saints flag football game this year. So we're gonna see what happens next year. But I don't know. If we could have a soccer game, I know we don't have a professional soccer team here, but that's really where I think I would have the most potential. I played soccer for like 13 years. So otherwise,
yikes.
it's going to be a big question mark for me. We'll have to see.
Jim wants to do a media foosball tournament. Jim's mean.
I know
That's mean.
That too. Yeah, they're big into soccer, and Juan still plays soccer. So and Sean's so athletic, I'm sure he could play soccer too. So yeah, if we could have like a soccer match here, that'd be fun, but we'll see.
My confidence in you as an athlete definitely skyrocketed when I just found out that you sent Gus into football retirement.
Yeah, seriously,
so
I was done.
That's
over with.
Put that on the resume.
My knee and my left heel are still hurting from that game. So
I just had to get that pick, but look, you knocked me down too. I was kind of a little shaken up after that. So you don't doubt your strength, Gus. Okay.
That's awesome.
So, but that was so much fun. Yeah. We'll see if we can both play in next year's.
Yeah, for sure. I will start training for that. That's the thing. We actually have to train to get ready for that. At Madeline Adams TV is the way to follow on X and on Twitter. As always, appreciate the time. Friday, January 12th, game 1 of the 10-game stretch. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me and looking forward to those 10 games. Can't wait.
Our thanks to Madeline Adams for joining us. Jim, always a pleasure to hear from Madeline. Now I'm a little nervous now. I mean, I didn't realize it's the media game for football, the media game for basketball is now going to turn into like the Olympics. She wants all the sports. Soccer, you want foosball. We'll do swimming, water polo, whatever.
The only problem I have with that is I feel like a lot of the media members, and I'll put myself in this boat, we need more recovery time than I think we can. I don't know if we can have 6 or 7 events a year. I think that's just too short of an off season between sporting events.
Or you're going to have to do it like a team, like in all the famous fun comedy movies that always deal with, going back to college or starting fraternities and stuff. You're just going to have to, choose. You're going to have a team, and then certain people are going to have to play certain sports.
Right.
Like, you don't want me playing soccer. I will watch. I will have no problem watching y'all soccer. I'll hoop. That's fine. So we can do that. But that's always fun. All right, look. Tonight, Minnesota, it's a big game against the T-Wolves. A, they're atop the Western Conference. B, they're very good. And in the games in the meetings so far this season, which is remarkable, they've already played 3 times. 122-101 on November 8th. On November 18th, 121-120. Heartbreaker here at the Smoothie King Center. Then the Pelicans get the win, 121-107 earlier in December on the 11th. So, Jim, by my math, 2 games to 1, T-Wolves. You win this one, you at least even the series there, and they don't win it. Not saying that it could come down to that, but you always want that. And that's just a tough place for the Pelicans to play. I'm trying to think the last time they won up there.
Yeah, and the T-Wolves are 14-1 at home this season. So, I mean, they've proven over and over again this year that, Sacramento's the only team that's won a game in the Target Center. So, I think one of the things, I think you could say this about a lot of matchups, but one of the things that stands out to me about the 3-game season series so far is the game that the Pelicans were blown out. They lost by 21. They shot 8 for 28 from 3-point range, which is only 29%. In the game that they won by 14, they shot well. In the game they only lost by a point, they shot over 40% on threes as well. So can they carry that over from the last couple games? I mean, they made 33 combined 3-pointers against the Lakers and the Nets these last 2 games, which is tied for the most that they've had in any 2-game span. So it seems like that's something that they're going to have to be able to beat the Timberwolves, especially in Minnesota. But also, Pelicans had 19 total steals and blocks against Brooklyn last night, which is the most they've had in a game since December 4th at Sacramento, which we all remember was the in-season tournament quarterfinal win. So I think those are a couple of things. If they just need to be able to carry over to the road some of the stuff that they've done at home the last couple games. But the good news is that really before this 5-game homestand, I think the Pelicans had been playing their best on the road of the entire season.
I think what's key too, Jim, in the 3 wins here at home, they were all led, and you heard it by Willie Green yesterday. The very first thing he talked about when Graf asked him, hey, how about the win? He goes, it starts with our defense. They've been playing pretty good defense. And again, I know the Nets are the Nets, but you're still holding an NBA team to that. It means you're still playing defense. It's about the rebounding. When I think of this team, you got Biggs down low and Gobert and Towns. I mean, Anthony Edwards is Anthony Edwards. But to me, what I'm thinking right now, the key, They got a board. Got to somehow get bored, stay out of foul trouble, attack. I'd love to see them get into foul trouble. I believe when the Pels have success against Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns is in foul trouble. Yeah. Anthony Edwards maybe has an off night. You just a player like him, you're not going to stop. You hope that he has an off night.
Right.
I mean, that's
Make
how
him
I
take tough shots. Basically.
I mean, honestly, right? I mean, it just kind of is. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, 71 points last night. I mean, that a guy like that, he's just capable. Hopefully when he plays you, he's doesn't play like when the Pels played him. I mean, it's how it works. So that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. I think it would be massive, Jim, especially when you have the Clippers who are uber hot. They don't look anything like the Clippers team that New Orleans beat in L.A. A while back to start the season. So it's a tough stretch, man.
It really is. And, it's interesting that the way that it lines up, especially with these next 3 games, Pelicans are in 6th place in the Western Conference right now. But over these next 3 games, they're playing 3 of the 5 teams that are ahead of them in the standings. So, I mean, you've got the Timberwolves have the best record in the Western Conference right now. The Kings are 5th. And then in between, the Clippers are 4th. So that's this is definitely kind of a gauntlet, a series of tests that the Pelicans are going to have over the next few days. Like you mentioned too, I've been looking up a lot of things as far as where the Pelicans rank since the end of the in-season tournament. And really, they're 2nd in the league in rebounding percentage. So that has improved a ton since, we talked about that as was a sporadic problem earlier in the season. And there's a bunch of categories, too, where the Pelicans are 2nd in the league. It's really since this in-season tournament, including defense. Obviously, it helps when you hold Brooklyn to 85 points like that. But really, the Philadelphia 76ers are the only thing keeping the Pelicans from being number 1 in the league in a bunch of different categories since the in-season tournament ended. Mm-hmm. And part of that is no disrespect to the Sixers, but their schedule has been complete with a bunch of teams at the bottom of the East. So this has just been impressive that the Pelicans have won 8 out of their last 11 games and have been so good in so many different areas.
All right, let's get Western Conference Wednesday. What's our topic?
Yes, the team of the week last week, and you know what, Gus? I feel like I'm on a little bit of a roll lately because I picked the Mavericks last Wednesday, and I said at the time, maybe we'll see a little shakeup in the standings. Maybe we'll see the Pelicans surpass them. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. The Pelicans are now a game ahead of the Mavericks. I think they were 1.5 or 2 behind them going into last week. Mavericks lost by 3 at home to the Cavs, who were super shorthanded, so that was surprising. Mm-hmm. They lost by 8 at Minnesota, beat Golden State by 10 there, and then lost by 37 at Utah. So the Mavericks are definitely trending down. It was a very rough week for them to only go 1-3 against kind of a so-so schedule. This week's team to watch in the West, I'm going to go back to the well a little bit from a couple weeks ago. It's going to be the LA Clippers. The Clippers are only 1 game ahead of the Pelicans. The Clippers are 20-12, but part of the reason I picked them, in addition to Friday's game here in the Smoothie King Center where the Clippers are becoming here, they have 2 games against Phoenix, which the Suns have started to get really hot. I think some of that is a little bit schedule related, but also getting Bradley Beal back. And then the other game the Clippers have is a quote-unquote road game against the Lakers. So 2 games against the Suns, 1 game against the Lakers, and then the Friday game against the Pelicans. Same thing with Dallas. I'm curious to see, can the Pelicans over this next stretch surpass the Clippers in the standings? Obviously, going a long way toward that direction would be beating them head-to-head on Friday, and you're already 1-0 against the Clippers. So, again, season series, that would be huge to be able to get another win against the Clippers. I think they play them 4 times this year, but if you can get up 2-0, you're almost there as far as the tiebreaker.
Yeah, it would be big. And again, all of this is going to set up for what I think is one of the most important starts to a calendar year. And I understand there's a lot more basketball to go. I totally get that.
Yes.
But, Madeline brought it up in our conversation with her as well, in that January, Willie Green said it yesterday, was kind of the season kind of got a little away from you a little bit, right? I mean, in that 10-game lose, all that. And I'm not saying that that's what's coming and you want to avoid. Mm-hmm. But when you look around you immediately to open up the season, I think you can take that next step of, okay, if you can, these 6 games, I'll add Minnesota at 7. 4-3, I'd be great. 5-2, I am high-fiving you. You know what I'm just saying? Yeah. But if I can just be above 500, it puts you in a position where You didn't even feel it was a wave that crashed over the bow. You know what I'm saying? You don't feel the ship's not sinking.
Right.
You're not taking on water. It's normal. You're playing 500 through that very key stretch, and now you can just focus on the rest of the basketball because the schedule, and we saw it towards the end of December, kind of allowed you to get some more wins. Next 7 games, I mean, they're all playoff teams. They're all first round playoff teams. So, let's see where you are.
And by the way, too, if we were going to, someone on the outside was going to pick a Western Conference team to watch, it might be for the month of January, it might be the Pelicans because, as John Schumann of NBA.com pointed out, they have the toughest schedule in the league in January based on opponent winning percentage. So
I didn't even mention the back-to-backs because we're going to go back
to
to
them.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, you and I felt it. We don't even play. But starting here we go again. We're about to not this weekend, but after that, it's back-to-back weekends. So Fridays, Saturdays, those things, add up a little bit. So I'm with you, Jim. If we could somehow have a 500 or better January, I think the Pelicans will be in a good spot to make sure to stay in that 6th spot or above. I almost feel like this month, it's going to be a battle every game. The schedule's not easy. The timing is not easy. Just get through it.
It's going to be fun, though. When the schedule came out in August, I remember saying that one of the things that's going to be exciting about this season is just the number of matchups that you look forward to in the Western Conference. So there's so many interesting games coming up, whether you talk about that 5-game road trip where there's 2 games in a row against Dallas. There's a back-to-back in Dallas. There's a back-to-back in Milwaukee at the end of January. So, very challenging setup of the schedule. But the good thing is I feel so much more confident right now going into this stretch than if this stretch had been the case in November based on where the team was when they start out 4-6 and they had numerous key contributors who were still sidelined by injury. They're in much better position right now, I think, to attack this collection of opponents that they have coming up over the next few weeks.
Yep, no doubt. Jim Eichenhofer, as always, appreciate the time, sir.
Likewise, Gus. Good to be here, and I guess we will be back in a couple days and talking Timberwolves and then looking forward to the Clippers game.
Yeah, Clippers game, and then Sacramento, that game on Sunday to start the first of 5 straight on the road. Give him a follow over on X or Twitter at Jim_Eichenhofer, and of course, Pelicans.com. Our thanks again to Madeline Adams, and again, big news. That's so cool. 10 games going to be aired over great television here in New Orleans locally. That's Fox 8. So Madeline, Juan, Sean, the entire crew, including Garland, going to be giving you more Pels coverage, and maybe Jim Eichenhofer can find his way onto the TV set. Have you been over there?
I'll leave that to you, Gus. I think you have more of the TV persona and the face for TV. I'm more of a face for podcasting and radio.
Let me tell you something. They can do wonders with Photoshop and, you can do it all the
video
editing.
shopping.
Sure. What they'll do is we're like, Jim Eichenhofer's here, and we'll cut straight to highlights. You know what I'm saying? So, we'll hear your voice, but we won't ever see you. Yeah. We can work on that, I promise. Okay. Hey, thanks for tuning us in. Don't forget, follow the show and like it as well so you'll know exactly when a brand new Pelicans podcast pops up as well. I'm Gus Kattengell. That's Jim Eichenhofer. Thanks for tuning us in. We'll see you Friday on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcast. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.